of some of the some of the key aspects of the executive order that our government is following right now and is adhering to, and is going to be judged on in the next couple of years. And it's really also not just for government, but really sort of a barometer also for the private sector. Some industries have already gone this far, particularly the financial industries, but others have not. So I think you're going to see a lot more public-private cooperation among this order and a lot more automation. So specifically, we're looking at, of course, of automation of cybersecurity. And when I talk about cybersecurity, it just really, it goes back to the same origin every time. When Vint Cerf and the others with Xerox PARC and DARPA were building it, they built it for communications and not for security. So unfortunately, everything that was done without security in mind, and we're catching up at this point. We're trying to catch up. Will we ever will? We don't know. And I like this cybersecurity wisdom quote. There are three types of people in the world: those who've been hacked, those who will be hacked, and those who are being hacked right now and just don't know it yet. And I guess that's a good example of what SolarWinds was. We didn't know we were being hacked for over a year. And it's likely that a lot of other big enterprise networks have bad actors in them already. We just don't know. So with cybersecurity, the challenges are numerous. There's obviously a significant increase in the size of the attack surface, largely led by digital transformation as we move through to more of a digital economy, but particularly by remote work, which is really now a thing, particularly because of COVID. And also because of the Internet of Things sort of coming online. I think Cisco said there are 50 billion devices this year. Be a lot more. They're estimating by 2025 there'll be 3 devices or 4 devices for every person. So each one of those is an access point for a hacker, as we know that anything connected could be used to hack. So Internet of Things poses a huge problem both to industry and to government. And we're seeing security investments being driven by these threats. The amount of spending now is in the billions, but the amount of damages is around 6 trillion, according to Cybersecurity Ventures. And the other aspects we're seeing now is that a lot of new disruptive technologies are coming online, like excuse me, AI, 5G, IoT, cloud computing, edge computing. So they're all bringing operational new security requirements, and that's also where a lot of the automation is happening, because you can't address a lot of these requirements and paradigm shifts in operations without having a lot of it automated. And so security teams are also finding complexity is one of their largest challenges. They're forced to rely on dozens of vendors and disconnected security products. Average security team is using 25 to 49 tools from up to 10 different vendors. So you have a lot of challenges up front. There's some more too, which are more tactical. Obviously, we have the Ukrainian Soviet conflict, or a Russian conflict, bad habit of calling the Soviet Union. But that is put the focus on nation state cyber attacks, and nation state cyber attacks also use a lot of criminal enterprises, particularly Russia, who is upping their ransomware attacks, particularly in healthcare. We saw yesterday that a healthcare facility in Boston was attempted to be hacked for the ransomware by Iran. So you're seeing a lot more state-sponsored activity. They're sharing tools in the dark web. And you're also seeing a lot of individual hacker forums sharing these tools. So what's happened is there's a consolidation of a lot of these smaller hacker networks into larger criminal families, or just relationships, a lot like the mafia. So you're seeing them exchange, exploit kits, malware, mixes of attacks, targets, people that have paid the ransomware. So you're really looking at all that. And the biggest compounding factor, of course, and this again goes back to automation, is that we have a very big qualified cybersecurity worker shortage. It continues to grow, and it's global. It's in OT and IT, and it's not getting any better any soon. So again, that's another big area for automation. So meeting the cybersecurity challenges via automation, just really going back some of the stuff I just said. You can fill in the gaps with the worker shortage, expanded activity of the Internet of Things with cyber vulnerabilities, so you can monitor IoT devices with artificial intelligence, machine learning capabilities. But of course, the other aspect of the coin is that cyber criminals are already doing this too. They're automating their own attacks with increasing success, sharing tools, and the phishing attacks just are basically out of control. A lot of them done by machine learning and algorithms. And so this really brings me back to really where I started. The internet was not built for security. So what do we do? So one of the biggest thing we have going for us right now is a cyber risk management mandate, also called the zero trust, which is a cybersecurity strategy. And obviously there's a lot of compliance requirements, but really it's a framework, and it's how we use it that can really be augmented through automated tools. So the benefits of the cybersecurity automation, there's an architecture and engineering. A shift in technology to automation will enable the cybersecurity teams to focus on designing and actualizing strategies such as cyber hygiene, zero trust networks within an entity, remediation activities after deficiencies have been identified. It's easy for the organization's security team to identify the most repeatable activities within the business environment, leading to less vulnerability they're on in. And development and engineering of automation. Automation is an integral part of a cybersecurity program, requires specially dedicated resources to be comprehensively designed and implemented. So automation tool chest could be a lot of different things, but it's definitely being used now for horizon scanning technologies, for analytics, for audits, incident alert tools, for diagnostics, and even self-repairing software. It's also valuable in enhancing existing cybersecurity architectures to see where there may be gaps. And it's promising to be the benefits derived now from artificial intelligence, machine learning as we advance in those areas. These technologies can provide more efficient decision-making by prioritizing and acting on the data, especially across larger networks where there are many users and variables. So this basically is an analysis tool that will help prepare proactively for cybersecurity. And of course, collaboration and coordination, open source platforms that allow us for the evolutionary, optimal, and secure integration of new tech and new applications in existing infrastructure. And open source collaboration has proven many advantages, including greater engagement by developers, which leads to more productivity, flexibility, and cutting edge innovation at lower costs. So I'm a big fan of open source platforms. Of course, there are issues always related with security to any platform, but the fact is that we're all in this together in collaboration, particularly through public-private partnerships, is the best way forward. So what is zero trust? We've heard a lot about it in the news lately. I like the succinct definition from NIST as a security architecture that does not automatically trust user accounts based on their physical or network location. So basically, you can look at that model and say that you're going into a analysis of where your vulnerabilities are, where your threats are. You got to start from the very beginning. You got to map it out, know what your assets are, know where your vulnerabilities are, or know what you need to segment, know where your key data is to be encrypted or protected. So it's really a good exercise, regardless of whether the term is becoming cliche. It really is a pragmatic way for companies and industry and also for government to look at their whole networks and devices and look where they need to activate cybersecurity principles. So the reality for zero trust is that the castle itself no longer exists in isolation as it once did. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we're all connected, interconnected. Network is hostile. We know that, and there are threats from inside and outside continuously. So you can't base anything on a location, and you need to authenticate and authorize every device, user, and anyone in the network. And this model is really just a quick overview of what it entails: the people, the devices, the networks, and of course the workload. Very simple, but very practical. So zero trust is certainly trending in government. It's one of the key elements of the May 12th executive order. And over the last 3 months, CISA and OMB have called for rollouts of draft zero trust strategies, draft cloud security technical reference architecture, and drafts of zero trust maturity models. It's being piloted now. There's a pilot now going on at DoD. Zero trust pilot is also undertaken as a joint effort by Cyber Command and Defense Information System Agency and NSA, where they're lab testing a lot of these technologies. And there's a new Defense Information Systems Agency. Actually, this contract was actually, I think, awarded for Thunderdome, a zero trust architecture that to begin implementing a prototype within 6 months. I think it went to Booz Allen. I'm not sure. So the components, of course, of all these activities: microsegmentation, involving setting up granular security zones, enhanced identity governance. Again, these are two things that could definitely be helped automated. Network infrastructure and software-defined perimeters, device agent gateway-based deployments. So that's just an overview of some of the quick things. There's other tools that are certainly adjacent or involved in zero trust, including cloud and edge computing, which is a vital part of the executive order, automation and adaptive networks, machine learning, artificial intelligence, real-time analytics, and I guess I mentioned the IoT, 5G, supercomputing, quantum computing, biometrics, authentication, all these cryptography, encryption, and stenography technologies coming online will have to adhere to zero trust principles and also be integrated for their abilities to enhance and fortify security among agencies and governments and also industry. So again, the main aspects, if you talk about zero trust, multi-factor authentication, security monitoring, privilege access management, device security controls, encryption. And it's surprising how little encryption is done. Actually, we're looking at one of the lessons of the Ukraine conflict is that a lot of the Russian communications have not been encrypted, which has allowed for a lot of the targeting of some of their higher officers. So encryption is definitely a vital part of any kind of operational plan within government or private sector. So where there's cybersecurity, automation, AI, machine learning are obviously tools, technology tools to automate. So automated network security and self-encrypting drives can protect critical infrastructure in all categories, real-time horizon scanning and monitoring all networks, automatic updating of defense framework layers, networks, payloads, endpoints, firewalls, and virus, and diagnostic and forensic analysis. So this is already happening. It's a part of most SOCs tool chests, but surprisingly, a lot of companies still are ignoring some of these basic automation tools. So what it's really good for, if you look at the practical terms, of course, threat detection, seeing where the spam and phishing is it, and the bot attacks, malware identification, AI and machine learning could help identify on the identity management by cross-checking the veracity of data across multiple fragmented databases, which is really important for a lot of the legacy databases in government, and for categorizing attacks and adapting to evolving risks. So we're really in this era now. The algorithms are getting better. We're moving along AI. We are pretty adept at machine learning now, but the future is certainly automated. And this is just a slide that I'll leave with my deck with everybody, but this is just really what artificial intelligence involves in the technology landscape. And you can see that it's pretty much comprehensive in terms of everything we do with communications. So as we advance in this area, our capabilities in cybersecurity are going to advance too. And so collaboration and cooperation is the area, I think, really where everything is going. It's really why CISA was created, to get the private sector and governments to collaborate and coordinate, in industry to collaborate among each other. And so you have public-private cooperation, which has been the mindset of DHS from this incorporation. And it really is the only way to gather enough threat intelligence to understand what's out there and who's doing what. And you see more and more collaboration happening. And that's also leading to our defense posture. You see a lot of the joint releases by FBI and DHS and DoD related to industry now, what the threats are and what they should do, what patching needs to be taking place. So you're seeing more and more of that. Of course, you see other things too, which you're all familiar with. I figured I should include this too, the PACE project, which is creating production-ready code that evaluates the posture assessment of computing resources. Communication fabric, which allows the organizations to use information for zero trust architecture decision-making. And PACE will continue to deliver community-related code that will arm operators with interoperable out-of-the-box solutions that monitor risk and threat exposures, reducing integration costs and redundancy while increasing resiliency. So again, those are all automated aspects of a project. So one of the big things that I know a few of you are going to be talking about today, or if not already, is SBOM. And SBOM has got huge momentum in DHS. It's described as by NTIA is a software bill of materials. It is effectively a nested inventory, a list of ingredients that make up software components. Or more specifically, SBOM is a formal record containing the details and supply chain relationships of various components used in building software. These components include libraries and modules and be open source, proprietary, free or paid, and the data can be widely available or access restricted. So SBOMs can accrue to both software suppliers and consumers, include identifying and avoiding known vulnerabilities, quantifying and managing licenses, identifying full security license compliance requirements, enabling quantification of risks inherent in software packaging, managing integrations for vulnerabilities, patching compensation controls, etc. So basically, you see all of this now is a potential to also to be automated in your packages. You know, the supply chain is still one of the most vulnerable aspects of both physical and digital supply chains for cybersecurity and security in general. So the focus on this makes a lot of sense, and most industries do have a bill of materials. And surprising that cybersecurity has not until recently, but it's happening very rapidly now. So a lot of the more use cases, specific use cases for SBOMs are transparency in the software, provenance and pedigrees, and your continuous security risk assessment, access control and sharing with customers who can access what data can be seen, threat intelligence, data correlation, software composition, license analysis, and policy enforcement, in software components of end-of-life monitoring, and SCRAM, which is supply chain risk management and supply chain screening. This is from Dmitry Raidman, CTO of Cybeams, who's actually been one of the leading proponents of SBOM. Happy to know Dmitry and work with him. And I recently wrote an article in Forbes on SBOMs. But really, DHS is leading the way. And one of our speakers will be speaking about that in greater detail. But I think that it really makes a lot of sense to have SBOM as part of this automated provenance of cybersecurity. To know if you don't know what you have in your inventory and you don't know how it behaves or what it's connected to, you're going to continually remain vulnerable. And again, this fits strongly within the zero trust model of analyzing every aspect of anything connected, whether it be a device or person. So the executive order for SBOM requires NTIA to produce 3 proposed minimum elements into SBOMs: data fields such as supplier names, components, names, versions of the component, and more; operational considerations such as frequency of SBOM generation, depth of dependency tree, access to SBOM data, and more; and support for automation, including making sure the data can be produced at scale and consumed at a scale using 3 different data formats. So it could be already standardized. It could include 3 leading file formats known as SPDX, Cyclone DX, and SWID. So a lot of this is not rocket science, it's logic. And the fact is that it is now becoming available, and it will be done from initially from the nascent part of through coordination with CISA is a really exciting proposition, I think, for the community, because we really have a chance to shape it and to bring some sort of deeper analysis, automated deep analysis to the prospects of what's connected in our supply chain. So zero trust use cases for SBOM can allow for discovery and mitigation of software security risks early in the production cycle. Really important when you're doing any kind of forecasting, or even when you're doing forensics, to know where the software security risks lie. SBOM makes you do that. You know, again, it's procedural. It's a checkoff list, but it's more than that. And by identifying an attestation of software package components up front, SBOM can help you access unknown risks and transition them into known risks. And still, there's a lot of issues now with vulnerability testing on unknown risks. We know the known risks sometimes from sharing a database, but of course, I think we're going to have an element of artificial intelligence help with behavioral aspects to detect unknown risks soon too. But SBOM really is a great tool for looking at those known and unknown risks. And it's still very early in the cycle for SBOM adaptation. As I said, it's really being pushed now in its infancy stages. But there's more transparency and accountability for software security and optimization. It's a good thing for both the public and private sectors. So the zero trust world is a big one, and at this point, I think it's expanding globally. I've spoken to some European offices recently, and getting feedback too that they like this approach. Of course, traditionally, there's been defense in depth, security by design, and zero trust is risk management principles, and they all have value in my opinion. I mean, you can't security by design is optimal if you're rebuilding stuff from scratch. Unfortunately, we live in a world of legacy systems, and if you don't have defense in depth, sometimes you might have a gap that's compromised. So the defense in depth is also led to those redundancies that I mentioned, a lot of different vendors. which could create SOAR issues just to begin with, and also other accessible points for hackers. So I think what you do when you're looking at the zero trust world is that zero trust is really an overlaying strategy that can incorporate some of these other elements from security by design and also defense in depth. But it really is more of a perspective on knowing that everything is likely corrupted, and because we cannot trust anything, we have to really look at every angle related to it, and this includes, of course, the software, includes the automation aspects, and includes actually anything physically attached to the system, the network that we may not know about. So I think we're moving into an era where every attack seems to be more sophisticated and more capable than it was in the past few years. And we obviously had more breaches every year. In the last 5, it's gone significantly up every year. A lot of this is related, of course, to remote work and COVID, protecting remote office, et cetera. But I think we have to prepare that we're now moving into a world where state-sponsored incidents in coordination with a lot of criminal enterprises are going to get much more capable, and we therefore need to up our game too. And so when I'm looking at this, I look at zero trust, I look at automation as tools to help up our game and protect ourselves, because a lot of this is beyond the capabilities of having a lot of personnel, which are difficult to hold, but really having to have the collaboration and the sharing from not only for the development of software, but from all the development of strategies and products to defend our castles. So at this point, I will open it up for any questions. I know I covered a lot in a short period of time, and this is really more of a primer, but it's interesting, I think, to look at the fact of where we're going and how much zero trust is really related to automation, just because it's impossible for a lot of these government agencies at this point, and without the requisite personnel and understanding to do a lot of this by individual time. So I think we're going to see more and more tools being adapted for zero trust, and certainly SBOM will be a valuable tool to that perspective too. And if you haven't, check out the Cybeats website. They have a lot of, and particularly in the resources area, there's a lot of interesting documents and articles there that talk about the future of zero trust and where it's going. So I think at this point, any questions you may have, I know I'm limited on time. Exactly, I have 5 minutes left. So happy to take any questions from the audience.
So Mike, you want to poll the room? Room should get first dibs at any questions. Anybody in the room have any questions? And we'll go to if people on the web have questions, raise your hand or put them in the chat.
We have one in the room. Go ahead, Patrick.
So as we're introducing these additional layers of complexity and abstraction layers to implement these methodologies and technologies, how do we, from a strategy perspective, how do you think we can not end up ultimately just increasing our attack surface?
I think we need to rely on a streamlining capabilities, and I think part of that is some of the tools of machine learning and artificial intelligence that need to be. You're right. I mean, there is a lot of redundancy in a lot of these tools, which are also openings for attackers. It's often in the SolarWinds is a great example of it. Sometimes in the security software itself, there might be a patch or a vulnerability, or with Microsoft too. I mean, every day they uncover vulnerabilities. So what you'd have to do now, I think, is rely more on the alert over the horizon of alerts of what may be changing in your network. And I think, hopefully, if you do have a group of tools, the orchestration of it, I think it needs to be put in with machine learning analytics to basically see what you need and don't need. Because you're right, I think complexity can be the destruction of really security. It's good to have the latest and greatest, but if you have too much and you don't know how to use it, and that's the other problem. Training is really essential for that too. But I think we can learn from lessons learned from industries such as finance and the gaming industry, which has really adapted great security postures and done a lot with segmenting their data capabilities. They've really already done zero trust. And so I think if we look at them as examples of how to follow and optimize your systems and your networks, that's a good path to follow.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions in the room? Don't think I see any in the chat. Chuck, this is Duncan. I'll go ahead and ask. Since Alan's in government, he can't speak for the government and give us any predictions on when they think some of this will happen. But since you're in academia, you are allowed to be more speculative.
Yes. Yeah.
What's your opinion on the implementation of the executive order and the time frame when it'll actually ripple out to, I'll say, the rest beyond the agencies themselves, but to their suppliers themselves?
Yeah. Well, I think at this point, also I have to say kudos to Alan, because he's an example of what one individual can do to promote policy within a government organization, and he's spearheaded this SBOM effort. So, I think that the environment's ripe for it now, and DHS, CISA are on board with it, and obviously other aspects of government have moved slower, like CMMC, but there's a lot of different aspects and reasons for that. I think, to answer your question, I think within the next year you'll see some good examples of what would be required for SBOMs. It may be a little longer than that, but I'm very impressed by the way DHS and CISA have been really putting things out there very quickly in this last year. I think there's been a lot of cooperation with the public and private sector movements, and a lot of these edicts and proclamations coming out in coordination with other agencies too has been sort of remarkable. So if I want to look at a good story, having come out, I was actually with DHS when it was first formed back in 2003 and helped set it up. I was a plank holder there, but I'm seeing that the pivot, particularly to digital and cyber, which is for good reason, and I'm impressed about how much is happening recently, because government could be its own enemy with bureaucracy and taking time to do anything. But I think in this case, we have a special example of how CISA has really brought in top people from both government and the private sector to accelerate everything, and that includes SBOM. So make a long story short, again, kudos to Alan, but I would say within a year or 2 years, we're going to see SBOMs as a strong part of a requirement, certainly for government, but probably I'll go on to industry too.
Well, thank you very much, Chuck. Go ahead.
Thank you. It was a pleasure talking to everyone again.